Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prognosis Podcast. Joining me on the show, Tara Singh Vachani. I've been trying to get you on the show for a while now, Tara, and it's absolute pleasure to host you today.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry it's taken this long, but over the course of the conversation, I'll tell you all the things I've been busy with over the last year and why it's taken this time, but lovely to be here.
Given the Max platform, you could have gotten involved on the healthcare or on the insurance side and taken it to the next level. Why did you choose to build this platform from scratch?
I think as a personality, I like to have a sense of ownership and accountability, and I think I learn best through that. I'm not one of those people that learns by seeing or hearing. I learn by doing, and that sense of responsibility and creating outcomes is something very naturally my personality and my instinct.
What gave you the conviction that this is worth giving the next 20-30 years of your life to? How difficult was onboarding your other stakeholder, the Max board, invest and nurture this idea?
Here I have to give credit to my father. I think he's always taken very brave bets, and when he's convinced of something, he will find a way to make it happen. And when the idea came in and I had the conversation with him, there are ABC reasons that we should start exploring this space. He thought about it and he said, let's do it. The idea of Antara came from the intersection of being able to create something that was linked to healthcare, to design, architecture and hospitality.
What was the inspiration behind choosing to build in this part of the world? Why build here?
I believe in India strongly. I am a very rooted, very privileged Indian. I don't take that for granted at all. When you come from a background of privilege where you have resources, we as Indians have to put that privilege to use.
So what are the USPs? Who does it appeal to? What are the various product lines within that platform?
We created a product that didn't exist, and it was a vision that one had. I assumed there would be customers for it, but it wasn't a customer first product. It wasn't me taking 300 people in the room and saying, what would you like? It was I have conviction, I want to create a community. How do I imagine this community to be? And then I went looking for that customer.
Who do you think has a natural right to win this category? Large corporate healthcare provider or very, very focused player specifically solving for this segment? Hello and welcome to another episode of the Prognosis Podcast. Like always, I am hosting another iconic healthcare entrepreneur on the postcards today. So if you look at the evolution of corporate healthcare in India, every decade there is a new frontier that opens up. So about 20 years ago, the focus was entirely on capacity addition, and that's when as a country we started adding a lot of number of beds. So there was expenditure both from the public sector as well as the private sector. That's when companies like Max, Apollo, Narayana, Manipal, either they were born in that era or they really took off in that era. 10 years ago, the focus shifted on making healthcare not only accessible but more equitable. And that's when on the policy side, initiatives like Ayushman Bharat came, and even on the private side, new healthcare delivery model which were low cost and affordable, they start coming up. Now, I believe, if I have to gaze into future, I believe the focus in the next decade is going to be about aging with dignity. And my guest today is building that future quietly since the last decade. Joining me on the show is Tara Singh Vachani. What really fascinates me about Tara's journey and the way she has built this organization in the last decade is that she is not looking at aging from a very narrow lens of just building, let's say, either tying up with hospital or building retirement homes, but she is taking a very 360-degree holistic approach. So she has built an entire ecosystem around aging, which includes assisted living, community living, at-home care, dementia care, and also a platform called AG Easy, which builds products and services for seniors. So I've been trying to get you on the show for a while now, Tara, and it's absolute pleasure to host you today.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry it's taken this long, but I guess over the course of the conversation, I'll tell you all the things I've been busy with over the last year and why it's taken this time, but lovely to be here.
Awesome. So very excited to unpack your insights about the industry and about Antara. But before we do that, Tara, and I've been doing this series for a while now, and my most favorite part of the podcast is diving into the formative years of entrepreneurs and operators, because I've realized that what shapes them, their personalities, what shapes their value system, or in most cases, the inspiration for the business itself, what they dedicate a few decades of their life into, comes from their formative years. So would love to understand, take us through your formative years, would love to understand how was your upbringing and how that shaped into who you are today.
Sure. So born, brought up in Delhi with two older siblings, elder sister and an elder brother, in a home that was very aware of the larger community and the larger ecosystem. I saw my parents always, having relationships that meant a lot to them, helping, supporting. We were always sort of that family unit that people could lean onto. And I think one of the parts of my personality that got developed then was wanting to be that reliable, resourceful friend and family member. And so grew up in Delhi, studied in Delhi, then went to boarding school in England, which was, great experience for me, created a sense of independence and autonomy. Lived in France, studied French, and then went to Singapore to university, which was by chance. And I loved those 3.5 years in Singapore, being close to India, still being able to see how India was developing and growing, yet having a very international exposure while being there. And then moved back to India at 22. And that's when Antara was born as an idea. And that's what I've dedicated my life to since. And of course, building my family and all of that as well.
So Tara, given the Max platform, you could have, let's say, gotten involved on the healthcare side or on the insurance side and taken it to the next level. The effort of building something from scratch is naturally 10x higher than going through the 10 to 100 journey. Why did you choose to build this platform from scratch?
I think as a personality, I like to have a sense of ownership and accountability. And I think I learn best through that. I'm not one of those people that learns by seeing or hearing. I think I learn by doing. And that sense of responsibility and creating outcomes is something that I think is very naturally my personality and my instinct. So when I moved back to India, I did start the journey as being a fly on the wall in the Max group, thinking that I would learn through watching and observing and participating, and that the inclination and interest of what I wanted to do would therefore develop.
Sure.
And now I can say very, very candidly, I was thoroughly bored for that 1 year being a fly on the wall. And then the idea of Antara just happened to come in front of me. And there was actually no reason not to. I didn't think, to be honest, at that point as to how difficult or challenging or that 10x effort that it was going to take. I just made up my mind that this is an idea and a concept I wanted to develop. And the universe, God, my family, the company, all of the resources supported me in doing it. And I just took it on.
Tara, now the idea or the opportunity looks very obvious to everyone. Number of seniors going from 150 millions today to 350 millions in the next 2 decades. There's global capital chasing these opportunities in India now, hedge funds, venture capital, private equity. There are a lot of entrepreneurs who have now started building into this space. But 10 years ago, it was very different. What gave you the conviction that this is worth giving the next 20, 30 years of your life to? And how difficult was onboarding your other stakeholder, the Max board, to, let's say, invest and nurture this idea?
Here I have to give credit to my father. I think he's always taken very brave bets. And when he's convinced of something, he will find a way to make it happen. And when the idea came into my mind space and I had the conversation with him saying, there are ABC reasons that we should start exploring this space, he thought about it and he said, let's do it. And I think for us at that point, the idea of Antara came from the intersection of being able to create something that was linked to healthcare, to design, architecture, real estate, and hospitality. And all 3 areas was something that we either had done and felt confident that we had the skill set, or we were excited to explore and do.
Sure.
So at that time, it just seemed like we were convinced. I mean, of course, there was also enough data even then to show how our country was aging, the demographic changes that were going to come. And I think the punch that my father is able to take and forecast and say, let's do it and see where this takes us. I think that's what gave me the conviction, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah, future gazing. So basically, identifying the trend 10 years or 20 years before everyone else does. That's a great insight. Tara, when you were initially modeling your business, what were some of the global models that you saw or you drew inspiration from? And of course, for India, the concept is, I would still say it's still relatively new. It's only a fledgling business, but we do see such models being very prominent in geographies like Japan or UK. So what sort of market research did you do in India to identify the gaps? And then subsequently, what sort of benchmarking with global peers did you do to understand what we can learn from them? Of course, there's a big per capita GDP gap. Right. So, learnings won't be directly replicable. The solution has to be customized for this market. But take us through that journey of iterating and finally coming up with the product that you eventually launched.
So I think the research was in 3 phases, Vivek. First was understanding data in India. What is the aging population? How are they aging? And who are they relying on for the aging process? And actually, over and above the numbers of how many people over 60, etc., there was nothing that I really found at that point that was serving this community. And so then I went actually internationally, and I spent almost 1.5 years just researching. And the front runner in this industry is the US. Second would probably be, and I mean in terms of expanse of products and services catering to the demography, as well as obviously quality and maturity. I would say Australia is probably now number 2. And Japan is now coming, as a very solid number 3, because we know what their, population and demography is. And so when I studied the US market, I saw a variety of products and offerings and services. And there was the concept of living as a community. There was assisted living, which was more care-based. Even within assisted living, it's divided into what they actually call assisted living and then skilled nursing. Then there is the entire memory care and dementia part. And then over and above that are a bunch of other products and services, financial services, insurance services, geriatric hospitals and care, daycare centers, etc., etc. And so they were looking at this demography at various different touch points. So I was actually inspired by the vision of that ecosystem that one day I, said maybe we could create as well. But at that particular moment when I started Antara, the piece that resonated most with me and I felt was therefore lacking also the most when I brought all that research back into India and then specifically researched that vertical was the community living aspect. And there the reason I felt it was such a potent idea was that if really the mission and vision of what I wanted to do was to impact quality of life, how could I do it in the deepest, most holistic manner and really, really be able to shift the needle there? And I discovered that community living was the way to do it. And so the model that we chased after and then did lots of adjustments to it for the Indian context was what the US calls continuing care retirement communities, which are age-in-place communities. The idea that you come in, you buy when you're independent, you feel a sense of autonomy at that point to take financial decisions, but you move into a community that has both the hardware and software to allow you to age in place. And so that's where the first concept was modeled over, and subsequently over the last 13, 14 years, we've diversified into other offerings and products and services as well, which we'll chat about.
Sure. So as an entrepreneur or as a person starting to work on an idea, if I oversimplify and overgeneralize it, there are 2 kinds of ideas. One is about selling a better version of a gas stove, which means that's when your consumer actually demand a better version of a existing product and service. The other set of ideas is basically selling a microwave oven, which means nobody knew that they needed a microwave oven, and it's a fundamentally better product, but the effort in getting your first few set of customers or critical mass, as we call it, is extremely difficult. So in India 10 years ago, the concept was new, and while it was a very, I would say, a natural analogy that as the demography here changes and also the disposable income increases, this idea was going to fly here. But there's also a cultural taboo attached to assisted living, and I'm telling you with a personal example. Last year, I got the chance to visit one such facility through a healthcare entrepreneur friend, and I was completely amazed by what entrepreneurs have been able to build in India. But if you had asked me the same question 2 or 3 years ago, I would have equated it with abandonment, or let's say only for the retirement, only for the super rich or ultra rich. That makes the job of an entrepreneur more difficult.
Absolutely.
What sort of resistance, or let's say convincing, you had to so one is of course the internal stakeholders, but when you actually launched and you were the pioneer, I mean, I can't think of many players who are doing good now existing back then. So what sort of reception did you get initially, and what sort of friction did you face in convincing your first few set of customers?
Every type of friction. And I in fact said this last evening, it's felt like we've climbed a very, very steep mountain. We're still on that level of incline, by the way. But at least today I can say that I can see the top of the mountain. And I'll explain the shift in that journey of the first 10 years and where the conversation is today. But I felt every sort of friction, because here I was, a 23-year-old walking into rooms with people who were 60, who had their life experiences, rightfully so, and were first and foremost saying, hey, who are you to come and talk to me about what my life for the next 30 years should look like? What credibility do you have? It doesn't matter that you are part of a max group. That doesn't mean your accountability and sense of execution is going to be anything. 2, you're asking me to change my mindset about how we take decisions about our later years. 3, you're in a town like Dehradun, which was where our first community came up, which is not really, for a lot of people, their natural place of settling. 4, you are at price points that are double of typical real estate in that ecosystem. 5, your monthly charges are absolutely 10x of what typical real estate is. 6, you have a lease model of real estate versus a freehold model, which is what people are used to acquiring. And why should we even consider this? So that was one tactical resistance of all these various points. And then there was a big one of the cultural and the social stigma. But one of the things we did very early on is we said, in Dehradun, we created 190 apartments. And we said we need to find families who, A, don't live as a nuclear family or a joint family, people who are living by themselves, and therefore have that sense of autonomy from other family as a construct, to people who are at a life stage who can take financial decisions for themselves. And the first, 100 people who bought, I did every conversation myself. And I don't know if it worked or if it didn't work. But I felt that I had to be the person having the conversation to explain why I was convinced that a quality of life living in this ecosystem was going to be beneficial. So it was a lot of resistance. And the truth is that till COVID hit, that resistance and that friction continued every single day and month. And as a small example, it took us 7 years to sell out 190 apartments in Dehradun. Today we have a wait list. If a unit comes up for resale, it sells out in 2 hours. The prices that community is being able to command in resale, I'm still shocked by it. So it took us 7 years to sell those 197 apartments. It took us 2.5 to 3 years to sell almost 300 apartments in our Noida project, which we launched in 2021. And it's taken us 6 months to sell 320 apartments in our Gurgaon project, or the first phase.
Wow.
So that just shows how people's mindset have shifted, both as a approach to the concept, and hopefully maybe the brand and the reputation and the sense of trust I'm hoping we have been able to build in the market.
Sure. I have one follow-on question to that, and before we of course deep dive into the business itself and the USPs and the offerings. And by the way, I have mad respect for entrepreneurs, especially healthcare entrepreneurs who choose to build in India, because building in healthcare, or let's say assisted allied areas, is actually equivalent to playing the game on a hard mode. It's incredibly difficult.
Thank you.
Especially for somebody like you who had the network and had the platform. One choice could have been just acquire let's say a community in UK or acquire a senior living chain in UK and then build on top of it. You could have created an outcome in a much faster way. What was the inspiration behind choosing to build in this part of the world where naturally the inflection point would, and I think that you even all your stakeholder would have realized that it would take some time for you to reach that inflection point. Why build here?
I believe in India strongly. I am a very rooted Indian. I'm a very privileged Indian, and I don't take that for granted at all. And I think that when you come from a background of privilege where you have resources, both monetary, intellectual, safety, security, I think we as Indians have to put that privilege to use. And I have seen my father, and again, he comes up a lot in the conversations because all the opportunity that I have today is because of my parents. Initial opportunity is very much to do with them. And I saw him give of himself to India to build businesses for Indians. And I saw the impact he was able to make in that society. And so for me, it wasn't a question mark. I'm not fascinated by bright, shiny lights of the West. I think that it's important for me as an individual to be grounded to this value system that I have been raised with, and to make the impact here. And then if you look at that from the emotional and spiritual lens, but also then look at it from the economic lens, look at the opportunity. It was evident there, it's more evident now. So there was no reason to do it anywhere else. And also, if you have a platform which you can rely on and lean on, and a platform which the client, the consumer, the recipient understands is one of trust, I think it's foolhardy to go and try and reinvent the wheel somewhere else. So it was a very clear decision for me to stay here and to build this ecosystem here.
Makes sense. Let's dive into the business of what the whole integrated ecosystem, as you describe it, is for Antara Senior Living. Why don't you also take us through evolution, what it was 10 years ago and how does the offering look like today?
Sure.
So what are the USPs? Who does it appeal to? What are the various product lines within that platform?
Sure.
Would love to understand more.
So when we started, like I said, I had that vision of what are all the things I could do for the aging population in India. And then you obviously dissect and bisect it and say, what are you good at?
Sure.
What can you create? What resonates with you? So to your point, that we created a product that didn't exist, and it was a vision that one had. I assumed there would be customers for it, but it wasn't a customer first product. It wasn't me taking 300 people in the room and saying, what would you like? And let me build that for you. It was I have a conviction, I want to create a community. How do I imagine this community to be? And then I went looking for that customer. And so we built Antara Dehradun with all the resistance we mentioned. And then I said, look, I don't want the challenges of this community to stop me in my tracks. How can I take all our learnings and actually make a customer first product? So the second project in that vertical became Antara Noida, where every friction point that I mentioned of Dehradun, we try to solve for in terms of location, in terms of price point, both entry as well as maintenance, or what we call Antara comprehensive benefit, the legal model. And we saw that response and receptiveness to it. But I was always convinced that we needed to play in different value pools. It was just that we were so consumed in the first 7 years trying to get the one community right that I couldn't think about growth. And today when I look at it, I feel maybe that's one part of my journey. I lacked the courage to say, is there a way to compartmentalize your experience and the challenges versus what more you could do?
Sure.
So we were so focused on Antara Dehradun, we took the punt of Antara Noida. And in 2019, actually, and this was a pivotal moment for me as an entrepreneur, founder, woman, parent, all of that. My older daughter was 1.5 years. And there were a lot of other changes happening in one's ecosystem. And I said, if I really want to create Antara as an ecosystem, as the brand that every home in India should think of when they think of aging, and therefore be able to expand into different offerings and verticals, I'm not the person to do it. So in 2019, I went to my board and I painted what I call the Antara 2.0 vision.
Okay.
And I said, we have what we call the senior living part, which are the retirement communities. I want us to venture into the second concept of assisted living, which is for people who are older, who need 24/7 by care, either in their homes or can't manage in their homes, who will not be at a life stage to buy and lock capital into a community living, but need that kind of community caregiving. I would like to create that vertical. And so that was going to be our next big punt. And the board was excited. I got my capital approved, all of it happened. And the last agenda point was I said, I'd like to quit as the CEO of Antara. And there was pin drop silence. And, everybody was sort of taken aback. And I said, look, it's not because of, and actually my passion and my interest and my engagement in the sector is only multiplying, but I'm too emotional. I don't have the operational experience to scale a business. And if I have to do justice to my stakeholders, shareholders, I need more expert leadership. And so Rajit Mehta came in as the MD and CEO of Antara. And he then started building the 2.0 vision and has captained the ship beautifully. And I changed my role essentially to say there are 4 or 5 things that I enjoy, I know I'm good at, and I can add value. And if I have the privilege of being able to spend my time and energy on those things, then I'm going to use the privilege to do it. Wow. So I changed my role. I mean, it's my baby. I live, breathe, eat Antara, but I just changed the way in which I did it. So in 2020, we launched our second business vertical, which we call Antara Assisted Care. But there are 3 use cases. There is people who maybe had a hospitalization stint, but still need some time to recover before they go home.
So rehabilitative care.
Rehabilitative care, transition care. 2 are people who cannot manage care in their own homes and therefore need to move into us from a long-term perspective. And 3 is essentially, people who are still living with their families, but let's say families are traveling for 2 or 3 months and they need their elders in their family to be taken care of. So that's what we call care homes. And then care at home is your traditional home care, but we do it very nuanced. We do very senior specific services. We do high margin services. We just aren't a body business where we only supply nurses and attendants. In fact, we're slightly pivoting that even to make sure that we keep the senior elements of our offering very clear. And then 2022 came our sort of version 3.0 where we launched Age Easy, which is our D2C platform for products. It started as an idea of saying how can we merge services and products for chronic aging. Okay. Are there conditions and situations that the elderly go through that cannot be managed necessarily by themselves, or where the last resort is surgery, if it's a chronic joint condition, for example, or it's a lung health issue, or it's fall management. So we launch condition-specific products where almost 80% of our products have some unique R&D and design that makes it senior specific. So Age Easy was launched in 2022. It's been a really cool journey because it's made us relearn everything we know from being a very service, infrastructure, space creation business. It's a digital vertical. So that's where Antara is today with 3 distinct business verticals.
I must say that there are very few promoters who have the maturity at your age as well as security about their own contribution continuing in the business, and very few people are able to get the onboarding of operator or a professional CEO right. Either that's timed too late, but must give you a lot of credit for doing that.
Thank you.
The way you explained the various elements of your offering, Tara, so the the community is more, I would say, a real estate and a hospitality sort of a play. But as you move from community to assisted living and home care and dementia care, the strength of your org also starts gravitating towards delivering clinical outcomes. So it would be very interesting to understand that how does that set in? Do you act as a linkage between the healthcare provider and the ultimate consumer, or are you the healthcare provider yourself? Do you in some way complement what a healthcare provider is offering, or do you compete with them? How does this look like?
So I actually, before I specifically answer the question, even in the community living part, our USP and reason of existence is the care part.
Sure.
So while it starts off as being real estate and hospitality, that for us is very hygiene.
Of course.
But the USP of Antara in the senior living space is that our tenant is the care elements, whether clinical, whether family care, community care, intellectual, all of the elements of care that come in and plug into even what we call our senior living communities is our critical North Star.
Sure.
So actually speaking, in that ecosystem, the care part starts as a societal community care, as I mentioned, to really create a sense of belonging, create a sense of relevance, create a sense of community. I believe that's very also definition of care.
Yeah.
And then you plug in the primary care parts, right? So we essentially replace your primary care service delivery in those communities where your day-to-day healthcare needs to keep you feeling fit both mentally and physically and prevent situations and outcomes that could lead to needing secondary and tertiary care. That's the role we play. If your needs of secondary and tertiary care come in while you're living in our communities, we are that bridge for you.
Sure.
We are that bridge for you for the care, and we are the bridge for you for your families. But we do, for example, a quality of life of index every 2 years to assess our community. Where are they in the quality of life?
That's a metric that you have come up with.
Absolutely. Wow. Where are you on basic parameters of quality of life? Are we being able to almost protect the regression of some of these things that happen by living the way that you live? We do fall assessments, for example, consistently and constantly, because fall is something that's a big setback.
And the most common reason of hospitalization of
correct. We do all the cognitive checks to see are there elements of cognitive decline that are coming in. And then we facilitate all the services and interactions to plug in some of these things.
Sure.
So we really believe that even in the senior living ecosystem, care is our front runner.
Primary focus.
In the assisted living piece, because we come in later in the journey and we come in when an episode has already occurred of a health crisis in a way, we can't play necessarily that role of prevention and quality of life. But we can say that here onwards, can your care be outside of a hospital ecosystem?
Sure.
And outside of a hospital ecosystem, but with the professionalism and the clinical rigor that doesn't require you to go back into a hospital or require you to deteriorate in your homes. So we take care of primary care when you come into our assisted space, and we do all the recovery work for you, all the rehabilitation work. Yeah. So we don't do procedures, we don't do surgeries, but we do all the aftercare that you could think of, and the high-end critical care when it comes to even things like long-term ICU care, for example.
Sure. And for the sake of audience knowledge, there's a very common perception that it is in the interest of the healthcare providers to extend the hospitalization duration, but it's actually not
true,
because for every extra day of hospitalization, the ARPOB drastically reduces.
Correct. So, and also I think there is a sense of consciousness in the healthcare players as well, that not just, of course, there's a financial need because ARPOB has dwindled, but they understand that their patients have recurring infections the longer they're in hospital, their mental well-being deteriorates, not being able to link up with their families and have them around. So there are multiple reasons why healthcare operators and families don't want you to continue in a hospital environment, and that's where we can step in.
So does that mean that the care at home part of your business that's very deeply integrated to some of these healthcare providers offering?
Absolutely.
Does that act as a funnel for your business as well?
It is the primary funnel.
Okay.
For better or for worse, it's the primary funnel. And which is also why a lot of healthcare operators are seriously exploring the care home and assisted living adjacency.
Sure.
And I think that will be tough competition for us because they will have a ready pipeline. But for us, I would say 70-80% of our funnel are doctor or hospital linked.
Got it.
The digital piece is picking up sort of in a very positive way over the last year or two. I think as the category gets created, as the brand gets created in this particular vertical, because today people think of Antara, they think of the Dehradun community, now the Noida community, or the partnership in the Gurgaon community. But the category is now getting built for assisted living as well. So the digital piece is starting to become a funnel, but it's still primary. Our relationships are with hospitals and healthcare and doctors.
Sure. I would love to, while I also have a view on this, but I would love to understand your take on who do you think has a natural right to win this category? A large corporate healthcare provider or a hospital, or a very, very focused player just specifically solving for this segment?
I believe in the latter. While it's much more difficult because the capital available for a focused player, or the healthcare connects or the consumer base is very different. I think this requires a different DNA. Because, while people say we must save up for our old age, because they assume that those savings are going to go towards surgeries and hospital bills, it's actually care that funding and that money needs to go for. And so the caregiving part is the critical part in aging, which is where you need to save up for. And to be able to give that quality of care, there is a totally different DNA and a mindset that is required. And so I think that ideally dedicated senior care players, and I hope and pray there are multiple of them over the next many years because of the demographic need. I think the DNA is there, but I'd love to know your view.
No, that's very well summarized. And most of the time, more often than not, I get corporate hospital operators on this show. And see, the playbook is very different. So while at a very, very theoretical level, everything related to healthcare or ancillary services may come across as a natural fit to a large corporate hospital chain, but you have been a part of the family that built India's one of the most iconic corporate hospital chain. So you would realize that the playbook is very different. And these niches, today it's a niche, but of course going to explode in the decades to come. But these niches are best solved or best catered by a player solving for just one thing.
I agree.
There's also an element of distraction, I would say today. Today, the public markets as well as the private equity market for healthcare, the core hospital providers, is very super hot.
Yes.
So everyone is focused on adding number of hospital beds. That's the singular metric that leads to the valuation or market cap of healthcare providers. If we take Manipal for an example, their number of beds has exploded since COVID. And Max, even for example, the number of beds, 5,000, 6,000 beds to say Apollo 10,000 beds. And that singular metric adds to the overall enterprise value. Most of these healthcare chains are also now either professional manager run or private equity run. So I think the focus is very, very singular, which is growth and expansion and adding that metric of hospital bed. In fact, I would say that assisted living or care at home is still slightly away from their core competence. Most of them are getting specialized provider to help them out for services which were a decade ago considered core. For example, dialysis inside the hospital, or pathology, or ambulance and emergency services. Because as these hospital chains are growing, they are realizing that an entrepreneur or a dedicated team solving for just one thing in their life, giving 100% of their time to just one problem statement, will eventually do a much better job than a player trying to solve 20 things.
And to that point, over the years when we struggled and every sale was difficult in Dehradun, or the assisted living beds, the occupancies to drive those, there's always been push, open up to a different age group, open up to a different value statement, problem statement, and we've just held ourselves to the fact that we are a senior care company. And it may not be the most exciting when you say you're in the senior care company, though now it is. And when we talk about how the narrative and the whole conversation around the category has changed, but it was very important to stick to the core and to develop the nuances needed and continue to develop the nuances that are needed because it's changing daily, and just stay on course and be that senior care company. So,
Tara, there's another thing that I find very fascinating about your offering. So, every org has a DNA, and while there is no commonly accepted definition of how do you define a DNA of a org, but to give an example, the last company that I built and ran was purely digital company. I had no physical presence. My offerings were not something that you can touch and feel. Whereas the current offering is a real estate heavy, capex heavy, asset heavy business. And I see that the DNA of the org that I'm building right now is very different from the DNA of the org that I was building, let's say, a few years ago. Their financial prudence in the first few years did not matter as much because naturally platforms, they become valuable and meaningful only at a certain scale. And at that scale, because your costs are entirely fixed, everything makes sense. Let's say hiring the best quality employees, hiring the Lamar Zoco coffee machines in our offices and all that. Now that I'm running a business where real estate is involved, where and not just at one place, but distributed real estate, each unit has to eventually become viable or profitable. If I look at your business, the community business is a very asset heavy, ops intense business.
yes.
Whereas if I come on the care at home or rehabilitative care or palliative care side, that's a very asset light business, and your core offering is the quality of care that you offer. So your product is actually better trained human who are obsessed about giving the best quality care to your customers. How did you make that transition from being the DNA of a real estate heavy, asset heavy org to a different DNA which requires and it flows from every single decision. For example, capital allocation. In that business, the capital allocation would probably go to some other areas, versus here, the capital allocation would go to training and development of the best quality people. So how did you go through that transition?
So, I think if your North Star is clear about the customer we are serving, and the fact that this demography, ultimately what they need is a sense of relevance, a sense of safety, a sense of belonging, a sense of care. That North Star actually can apply to all of the businesses and the verticals that we do. And we don't lose sight of that. Of course, we are humans. We may do it very well one time and do it, not so well the next. But we don't lose sight of who our customer is and how we are going to be able to impact their life. So if you look at all three of our verticals, and I'll come to the technical parts of the question in a minute, but if you look at the simple 350 rupee knee brace that we sell on our platform, right, on agz.com, that knee brace is going to support that customer's morning walks, which is a ritual that lady or that gentleman must have had for 30, 40 years of their life. And their knee hurts and they can't do that morning walk, and it means that they are not feeling physically fit, their digestion feels off, they don't get to meet their friends in the morning, and their entire day, week and month is gone. And so if we can give them that knee brace that gives them the confidence to go for the walk, and they can get back into their rhythm and routine and their mental joy and happiness, if we don't forget that story, and we don't therefore also forget the fact that the person who has bought a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 crore apartment in our senior living communities, and the fact that their entire routine ritual is also linked to us, and that assisted living resident who has had a surgery and needs to get back to their life as we know it, or their family members worrying about them, that thread is the same. It's the same, and that's the North Star. And that is what ties all of this in together. But from a business lens and a business perspective, we had to keep adapting, because when Dehradun felt like such a struggle, we said, what is another value pool that will be asset light, where the demand is a need based, not necessarily a want based, and therefore selling will be less difficult for us while staying relevant with the North Star still intact. So actually assisted living came as a reaction to the challenges of the first Antara Dehradun challenges we had. we didn't realize that between then and when we launched assisted living, the fate of that entire vertical would change to be successful and people would understand. By then, we had already decided that we will not go buy land because that's not an expertise we have or want to build. And so we will partner. So we said, how can we even execute 1.5 million square feet in the senior living vertical while staying true to that North Star, but not having some of the challenges we had experienced. So the adjustments of the verticals were reactions to the market and funders and people thinking about how long each of the journeys of these verticals were going to be. So assisted living was a reaction to the challenges with senior living business. We realized even in assisted living that we're building a category and that the infrastructure challenges in India are going to not let us grow and impact as many lives as we want. Okay, so how do we impact more lives? Let's look at tech, let's look at platform, let's look at value pools of simple health and wellness spends. So actually each of the verticals has been born by the learnings and desire to stay relevant, but not lose out in the race because of all the challenges of the previous vertical.
I love the way how you have been able to cut the clutter and actually explained that how it was a natural evolution for you. I would like to double click on one specific segment of your business, which is home care. That's one segment which actually got a lot of interest in the last 10 or 12 years. We saw a lot of people coming up, building products and offering in that segment. Initially, there was also a lot of positivity in form of capital chasing those opportunities. Unfortunately, we have not been able to see or we have not seen a lot of big outcomes in that segment. Despite companies raising multi-million dollars. One of the reasons that I believe is that the care element or the clinical care element was missing, and most of these players ended up becoming a body shop. And as you become a body shop, it's incredibly difficult to scale because then there is no standardization. And then you are competing with the local mom and pop shop guy who's in the business of giving you a person from by doing a recruitment, untrained person recruitment drive in a village and supplying you people. But I'm sure as an outsider, that's a very simplistic view. What do you think are the challenges that are unique to the home care segment, because of which the industry as such, while it poses a lot of potential, but despite so many good teams trying to build large outcomes there, despite capital availability, why have we not seen some large outcomes in that segment?
I don't think, by the way, it's a simplistic view at all. It's the right view. It is the offering within Antara that gives me the most grief. It's the one that I have and we get the most feedback about. Because it is incredibly challenging offering. So from a business lens, we don't actually put marketing rupees behind home care. It's what we call a completion of service. So our current captive audience, word of mouth, referrals is who we target because they know us, they have experience with us. If there is somebody who's come for rehab in one of our care homes is going home, they naturally want that, extension. Hospitals that have worked with us who don't have their own home care vertical like to work with us. So we don't actually chase this yet as a business model. Two, like I mentioned earlier, we do high margin services. So we say we will hopefully try to be the best in class in setting up critical care in your home. We will be best in class in physiotherapy. We will be best in class in neuro, ortho, and maybe even onco home care. And that's something that we are slowly adjusting and pivoting. So for us, it's a completion of service. We are not putting big bets on it right now. And the reason for that is exactly what you said. No home care player has been profitable. Two, if our North Star is again impacting quality of life, making A, B, and C more positive, home care makes it very difficult. We don't have control ultimately of the last mile delivery. It's not in our premises. We do the highest number of training hours of any home care company in the country. The way we try to recruit, the benefits that we try to give, but it doesn't matter because the fact of the matter is, and here are the three challenges. The challenges are that the customer is still not willing to pay for the quality of service that we want to deliver. And till that doesn't change, no home care provider can actually make an impact and be financially profitable. That can only happen if insurance gets unlocked, because out-of-pocket pay in a country like India, when the perceived value doesn't actually exist, because you can say, हमारे घर में भैया हैं, दीदी हैं, वो हमें दवाई दे देंगे, वो हमें बाथरूम ले जाएंगे, तो why should I pay 3x to a organization just because they're wearing a uniform? Because it's so intangible, the benefits of it. But in reality, it is a tangible benefit, but that communication between the tangible and intangible hasn't happened yet. So till insurance doesn't come in, where some level of out-of-pocket, spend starts to come down, and therefore we cannot pay our nurses and caregivers more, we will continue to have attrition to international markets that are paying 3x, 4x. I learned a data point that there are 38 companies in India that have gotten formed just this year to send nurses and caregivers abroad. How are we to compete? We cannot. So it's a loss. It will by default therefore be a loss-making initiative. So that's our take on it. But I do think with the 350 million seniors by 2050, there's not going to be enough infrastructure that's going to get built or created to take care. So the caregiving piece is the largest unlock that happens. And that has to be a combination of government, philanthropy and private sector that has to work together to make a caregiving ecosystem that's robust enough that we can keep talent in the country. That's the biggest piece for me.
That's actually quite aptly summarized. Of course, there were a few players who lost view of their North Star metric in the last decade and just ended up being a body shop. But I would also like to cut some slack to home care providers like you. So we have some overlap in that segment in a very humble capacity. We are in the business of providing skilled manpower to home care providers such as you. And you are absolutely right. As Indians, we don't want to pay. And if we are, when we pay, we compare it to a bhaiya or didi jo gaon se aa jayenge aur help kar denge, like you rightly said. And if we pay and procure services of professional players, तो फिर हमें लगता है कि हम उनसे क्या ना करा लें. So one of a candidate going through us, 2 years graduate diploma in nursing, 1 year of hospital training.
कुछ फर्क नहीं पड़ता.
उसको आप बैठे हो तो सब्जी काट दो.
बिल्कुल. I mean, just to give you an example, literally the last few months we have tweaked our product offering because I said I can't have this grief anymore where we are just, there is a mismatch of expectations and what we want to do. So we do 50-60 hours of training per deployment. We check in every week. We require our nursing and our caregivers to do 1 hour of training online every week. We do uniform. They get all of the benefits. We do transport. But something small like the patient and the family will not allow the caregiver to take that 1 hour to do a training, as an example. We've now made content and videos explaining what our caregivers will not do. So it's a very difficult, very different ecosystem. Many times been tempted to say, why are we doing this? Why are we risking our brand? Why are we risking the reputation? Because like I mentioned, last mile you cannot control. But then there are enough people who believe in us and like what we do and who we can really help. So we just continue to do our best. But it's very tough.
No, I think you're right. See, at times it's also about the right time. I mean, of course, there's a clear need. The idea is amazing, but the right time of the idea also has to come. I think now Blinkit or Zepto is as natural as it comes to us Indians. But 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Webvan was considered to be a bad idea, or even Big Basket in the early years, delivering grocery in 2 days. लोगों को लगा 2 दिन में क्यों चाहिए?
बिल्कुल.
Yeah, grocery ऐसी कौन सी important है job? So it's about a cultural thing. It's also about the timing, as you rightly put it. So I'm assuming that, and you already answered that question in a way, that you're not pushing the growth button on this home care segment on a standalone basis.
We want to be deep. We want to be focused in the home care piece. We want to be able to keep our North Star intact, and then, but not vacate the space, because when that unlock happens, we don't want to miss out. So we want to continue to grow our understanding of how the mindset of the customer is, how we manage clinical outcomes in home care, how do we use tech better in that ecosystem. So continue to exist in this space, develop our foundational layers, and then see how the ecosystem unlocks.
Yeah, and I think that has, I have not deeply studied the Max Hospital Group in that sense, but I'm sure even the journey of building one of the largest corporate hospital group would not have been so obvious in the first few years. I was talking to Viren Shetty on this podcast, and he was mentioning that for the first 6 years, Narayana had one hospital.
Yes, of course.
And the next 6th year, I think 15.
Yes.
And the 6 years after that, 20.
Yes.
So yeah, it's very, very important to at least be present in that segment so that you are relevant plus you are up to date and you keep on sharpening your offering, and then eventually when the unlock happens, as you rightly said, you are ready to dominate the market. So Tara, let's talk about the third arm of the Antara group, which is the Age Easy platform. What was the inspiration behind it, and how does the platform look today? What sort of products or services can seniors avail of on the platform?
Sure. So, the genesis of it was how can we impact more lives with keeping our North Star in mind of really being able to say, what is that moment of truth that we can be relevant for in a home with someone who is getting older? And because we realized that, infrastructure would always be a restraint. It's not just capital, it's just the fact that to create spaces, brick and mortar, the way in which we like it, fully compliant, takes the time that it takes, and we're not going to shortcut there. And so when we looked at value pools of expenditure that people in this demography were consuming or utilizing, health and wellness was a big one after 2020. And of course, within that, there are multiple ideas that came about. But there was an idea to say that there are chronic conditions that seniors are facing, where the last resort is surgery. And somewhere in that chain, they tried multiple things to help themselves. And not enough has been done to create USPs around ways and means to actually impact that condition or that journey. So we said, let's look at the conditions that affect majority of the seniors, what exists as terms of products and services in that space, in the chronic condition space. So we actually launched Age Easy saying that the entry point for a customer would be a service.
Okay.
So for example, when we chose joint condition as our first, a joint pain or joint discomfort as our first condition, we said, okay, can Age Easy can the entry point be a service? Can the first point of call be a doctor or a physiotherapist who can understand what your needs are and then recommended products from our portfolio?
Sure.
We then launched after that a fall management solution with a similar entry point, then lung health, and next month we hope to launch our gut portfolio. So with these conditions and portfolios, we have about 80 different products, hundreds of SKUs, and we will keep enhancing and go deeper into that condition to make impact. The pivot that we had to make, or the change we have to make, the word pivot is overused, was that we realized we were creating too much friction for the customer entering at a service point, because people are not willing to pay for the service. And so not only are we losing time, energy, money with that offering of that service, but it's also not giving us the product transaction we wanted. So we actually then just became a product first company, where we said that each product should have enough USPs and R&D that make it senior specific. There should be enough information per product for you to understand the benefit of it. And then there should be a level of service if you so wish after you have purchased the products. So that's what the platform looks like. We're on marketplaces. We also have obviously our own website. And within all of these conditions, we have a repertoire of products that we really believe that can either improve your current condition or at least create a longer runway before you need very serious clinical intervention.
Sure. Tara, a lot of players in your space have been able to raise external capital, and of course there are multiple advantages of raising capital, but one, I would not call it disadvantage, but one aspect that comes with raising high risk capital is that then you have to grow, because then you have to give exit to that capital in 4 or 5 years, and then you have to replicate what's working very, very quickly. the advantage of founder or the promoter being in control and not, let's say, bringing that sort of a capital on your cap table is that you can choose to grow at your own pace and solve not just for a exit in a 4-year time frame, but also a lot of other things. For example, what matters, the North Star, as you mentioned. But having said that, talking to you, it's quite clear that as a person, you are extremely ambitious and you are not going to settle down for anything less than a iconic outcome. So give us the 5-year vision. What would the business in your mind look like after 5 years? Which segments will, let's say, do you think are where the PMF is proven and are ready to scale to the next level? Where would you go for calibrated scale, and where would you, let's say, avoid scaling too much in the next 5 years? And how does the business would look like?
Yeah. I think one of the things that makes us uniquely positioned is we're the only publicly listed company in the senior care space in India. And that also happened by chance, because when we were incubated under Max India Limited, which was publicly listed. That was the parent of our health insurance businesses. And then Antara was small and sweet in there. And when we exited healthcare and health insurance, we had the opportunity to say, should we, privatize the company? And we took a decision not to, knowing that there will be challenges of staying publicly listed in a sector where actually nobody knows about us
there will
or
be
the
quarterly
sector.
appraisals of what you're
There
doing.
will be quarterly, but we felt that the governance and the fact that the visibility that it will give us will eventually work in our favor. So we, continued in that sense. And the universe has been kind. We've sort of 4x'd in the last 4 years. Still very small as a market cap in today's day and age where the numbers just seem to blow one's mind. But I'm definitely ambitious for this to see that kind of a trajectory in the next 10 years, looking at the conversations and dialogues, players, investors, stakeholders that are happening. So we actually did our first fundraise this year after 14 years of being funded internally. We did a rights issue in January, which was oversubscribed, which was very interesting for us. It was a small fundraise, but it was very interesting to see how the retail markets participated, which meant that there is an awareness that is built.
And the validation of whatever you have built.
And the validation, and actually that was the reason to do it. We do need the capital to grow, and we said, we need to understand how the market is thinking about us, other than just the verbal investor conversations we have. Will people put, money where their mouth is? And the rights issue went off, thankfully, very well. And there were investors that couldn't participate because we were oversubscribed. So we did a small pref after that for 2 or 3 key investors that wanted to come in. And hopefully in the next year and a half, we want to do one strategic fundraise with a partner who will build Antara with us. So that's on the fundraising and how public markets and investors are looking at the space. We're seeing a lot of interest, a lot of conversations, but we are going slow to go fast. And therefore, what do the next 5 years look like for us? The next 5 years from the senior living vertical is we want to do 1.5 million square feet a year. And the reason for that is for all the challenges I mentioned of infrastructure, finding right partners, right developers, and creating the quality of the product that we want to create. And that PMF is set. We are actually getting pushed. Why only 1.5 million? You can do a lot more. But like I said, there are constraints we are aware of as operators and execution responsibility that we don't want to, tamper with. I think the PMF on the assisted piece is we're at the cusp of that PMF. Can I say today that I would put in the next 90 days, I would be willing to put on paper 1,000 more units? No. Because this 500 beds that we have, we're at the cusp of the PMF, and we are refining and tweaking and changing and adjusting. But the demand on paper just seems very obvious. But it's about really fulfilling the profitability of that piece. So I think we're on the cusp of that PMF. And then we hope to be able to add another 1,000 to 1,500 beds in the next minimum 3 to 5 years for the assisted living piece. And the age-easy piece, it started off as an experiment. We're hoping to close the year with an exit revenue about 100 crores this year. And from what I hear for a D2C business, that's
For such a fledgling business, that's quite good actually.
It's a good place to be. But again, our growth comes from where are we going to make impact, and therefore even when we talk to investors, we are very clear about how we will grow and what we will do for that growth. So the AGC piece, we want to continue to create more conditions that are meaningful, and then hopefully be beta positive in the next 2 to 3 years, because I think it will take that long to continue to create this category and this vertical. But we're seeing that to be, a really interesting and exciting space. But we are not going to be a D2C brand that's just there to burn cash.
Sure.
We're not wired that way. That's not our DNA, and we're not
Sure.
going to get investors who are going to, push us into be able to do that.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Tara, you also spoke of an unlock that is bound to happen in the coming decade, especially on the post-hospitalization side. What role will insurance access play to that unlock? Because internationally, the reason why post-hospitalization businesses have worked is because there are an insurer that covers that aspect of the business as well. And it's in the benefit of the whole ecosystem, because eventually if some part of the care is happening outside hospital, it also means lesser hospital bills for the insurance companies themselves.
Yeah.
So how far do you see is India, or how many years away from that becoming mainstream?
So, it's a piece that we are very deeply involved in. It's a place that we are advocating for very aggressively. One, because we have an insurance background. But in spite of having both a life insurance and health insurance background, it's an unlock we've not been able to do in the last 10 years because this demography has not been a priority for insurers.
Sure.
But it's shifting and it's changing very fast. So my sense is in the next 2 years, we're going to see a lot changing in the insurance paradigm, and it's a must for this category. And so, if we initially can start with an insurance where there's bundling of products, let's say, where you say, okay, we do 3 days in a hospital and 3 days in a care home as a starting point, or 3 days in a hospital and we'll cover your home care for 7 days. It's there. It's a very hot topic. There's a lot of advocacy individually as well as collectively that's happening from a lot of the senior players. So fingers crossed, toes crossed, in the next 2 years, this is an unlock. And that's why when I say that we are at that cusp of PMF, is because insurance plays a big part in that unlock for us from the assisted living piece.
Sure. Tara, culture is a very talked about word, and more often than not, companies resort to mentioning culture in fancy words on their vision and mission statements. But in your kind of business, for a significant chunk of your business, staying to your North Star metric actually means offering the kind of care that you expect to offer through humans. It's a very human-led operation, especially the post-hospitalization care part or the home care part. The kind of obsession that you have about staying true to that North Star, how do you maintain that obsession as the organization scales? Because then people come from very different backgrounds, they have different motivations. How do you align that army to that one common goal, to that cultural tenets, to those values?
Yeah. In a family and a home, the only way any learnings, this is my belief, and there's also actually scientific evidence to prove this, but there's only any ways in which learnings can be disseminated or ingrained is role modeling. It's the only way. You can sit and read books to your children, or you can, make them watch films, or you can do multiple things, but ultimately it's role modeling. And I think that's the same in any organization, is that when a conversation happens around decision making, can the conversation genuinely exhibit elements of the culture that you want to drive? It's really, I think, as simple as that. Not to say that we're consistent in the 1,200 people that work in Antara today, that everybody will feel strongly as I do. But I can safely say majority feel as strongly as I do. And that's simply because of the quality of conversation we have. Of course, there's L&D and there are posters and there are galvanizing efforts. I mean, every organization does that, and those are hygiene.
Yeah.
But I think it's role modeling and the quality of conversation, that if we have 5 rupees to spend how are we taking that decision around the 5 rupees? And I don't think there's a trade-off. I think for years, organizations that have had North Stars that are slightly emotional or driven by purpose or passion have been penalized by saying that there is, therefore financial prudence and financial outcomes are tier 2 and tier 3 in your list of priorities. I don't think there is a trade-off. And I want to be able to prove that to be the case. So it's just simply the conversations that you have and therefore the role modeling that you can exhibit. I think that's the only thing I can say to answer that question.
Sure.
And hopefully it will continue to work and be potent.
Okay. Tara, now, like all us entrepreneurs, operators, we are juggling 1,000 priorities at work. But one aspect that is often less talked about is juggling hundreds of other things outside work as well. And before, when we were off camera, we were discussing about how difficult it becomes at times. But you said something that I found to be very profound about how do you avoid guilt as a mother and a very successful entrepreneurs. There are conflicting priorities, and while juggling through them, you have your own mechanism to avoid guilt. And you said that it doesn't help you in any way. Actually, that doesn't solve anything. I would love you to talk about it, because I'm sure successful women or women who are working very hard to be successful in life would draw a lot of inspiration from what you guide them on.
It's hard to speak for others, but I think I truly do believe that everything we do in life is a choice. Very difficult choices for a lot of people. My choices maybe are much easier because I come from privilege. I have the resources. So this is by no means simplifying anybody's challenges or struggles. But I do think ultimately the essence in life is that we all take certain choices. And therefore, if we have the freedom to those choices, then there cannot be any guilt, because guilt actually teaches you very little. It's an emotion that consumes you. And if it doesn't lead to you taking different choices or different decisions, it's completely redundant. So I think if you make a choice to live the life that you want to live, then you have to live each part of that life with full acceptance. And those changes will happen. Today I may make a choice for A, B, and C, and tomorrow C, D, and E. And again, like I said, I have an ecosystem that allows me that flexibility and freedom. So I avoid guilt as an emotion. It doesn't exist for me. If I feel in that moment I could have done something differently, I will try and make a different choice the next time, but not stew in what has happened in the past, because not much positive will come out of that. So I don't know if I've been able to explain it, but I do think it's an emotion that teaches you very little.
Awesome. I think we are nearing the time completion, but before I let you go, this is the last part of the podcast that I do, the rapid fire round. So
okay.
Natural reactions, whatever comes first to your mind. So my first question is, if you were given a time machine and you can go back to 2012, what is one advice that you would give Tara of 2012?
To not second guess myself as much as I did. That to have a lot more confidence in my belief system and my North Star.
As of today, where you are today, what is a harder role to play? What is more difficult? That of a founder and I would say a chief culture officer of the organization, or a mother?
A founder and chief culture of the organization, for sure.
If you were put across the table with, let's say, the policy makers, what is that one ask you would put for the senior care industry?
I would ask for two things. I use the opportunity for two things. One is the insurance unlock, and two is to really put effort and weight behind developing the caregiving skill sets that we need. Those would be my two asks.
Who is that one leader or person from who you draw a lot of inspiration on the professional side?
I've never been one of those people that has looked at any one leader for inspiration. I actually love learning through any conversation that I have. So I don't have that rapid fire one person that is the person for me in this context.
What gives you paranoia? Let's say if you have to think of what could eventually derail your plans, what is that one thing that keeps you awake at night?
Not being able so two things. One is, if a customer or a patient is dissatisfied and we have not been able to successfully execute what we have promised, that keeps me awake at night. And two is, at the time that I am right now, because of all the last 14-15 years, I just want us to be able to overcome this cusp of profitability and to show that as a business model, we can now cross over that from being culture, brand, value, contribution to now profitable and financially stronger.
That brings us to the end of the podcast, Tara, and I'm so glad we could finally do it.
Yes.
Thank you for being super candid and honest in the podcast. I'm sure our viewers would have learnt a lot. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. That was really fun.